Hi, everybody.
Hello, all.
Welcome aboard. Um, we've never done this before. We've never done this particular way of communicating with you. Now, I have done things like this over at Sparkle Stories, but we haven't, Meredith and I, done this with Story Steps Education or How to Story, which I know is confusing, but is a different thing than Sparkle Stories. Sparkle Stories gets questions about our courses. We get questions about the stories. It's lovely, but it's still the case that they are two different things. So to further confuse that, we're using the same platform and using this wonderful platform called StreamYard that connects us with you on Facebook and connects us with you on YouTube. So hello, everyone. I'm David Sewell McCann, and I am connecting with you from Austin, Texas. Hello, Meredith.
Hello, David. So glad to be here tonight, particularly grateful to be with you, David, and to know that we are joining with others who, whatever your experience is, have been going through something,
Mhm.
are going through something right now.
Yeah.
So I have looked forward to knowing that we were going to be together. I'm Meredith, and I'm coming to you from Burlington, Vermont.
And now that we're mentioning what state we're coming from, those of us in the States in particular, but I know that people in Canada and around the world as well, because we're on the heels of the election, and the election has not, both in House of Representatives, Senate, and the presidency has not been fully decided yet. So the fact of where we come from has this extra story to it. So I'm wondering if we can take a minute, and for those of you who are here live right now, more people show up by the second. If you can tell us where in the world you are, and if you're in the United States, which state you're coming from. And you can put those into the comments on Facebook or on YouTube. We would love to hear from you. So Texas here, which I know that many of you have been paying attention to Texas because it's been a very dynamic year for Texas politics. And I've actually been working with Texas politicians in general, and people in local government. And it is very exciting, very dynamic, and a lot of change happening. So we've got Las Vegas
Mhm.
here, Nevada, which is Nevada and Georgia. Tell you what, those are a lot happening there right now.
We've
New
got
York.
our eye on you.
Washington is here. Washington, great. Thank you, Derek, for saying thank you. It is really a joy to be able to be with you. This is really reassuring and soothing for us. Canada, but vote Nevada. Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Yeah, we're all showing up here. Virginia. This is so nice. Well, as more states are coming in, I want to clarify what we're up to in the next 50 minutes. So the goal is about story. It's about storytelling. Meredith and I are both educators. We're both parents. We work with adults. We work with kids, and all of it is connected by story. And so the motivation with tonight's, we're calling it a mini course because we're actually going to work on something. We're actually going to create something. Is to investigate the American story, because Meredith and I have had this conversation, and I have had this conversation with other people. Meredith has had this conversation with other people. There are aspects of the American story which don't seem to be working, or at least they're not working for me. And what's not working for me may be different from what's not working for you. So let's be really clear about that. This tonight's workshop is for everybody in the United States, every single person.
Mhm.
We all have stories about what this American experiment is. Even that phrase is a story, American experiment. So what we're going to be doing is, with respect for each other, no matter where we're coming from geographically or where we're coming politically or where we're coming emotionally tonight, is we are entering into a storytelling process and a storying process where we assess what is our understanding of what it means to be American, what is our story, our personal story. When we have consciousness of what that is, what are we not happy with? What do we want to let go of that we don't think is serving us as citizens or as people who live here? And then what do we want to replace it with? What story of America do we want to create and tell and retell and retell? Because that's how reality works. We tell a story and we believe it. So, Meredith, I'm thinking what we should do before we get into the warm-up is talk just a little bit about story step education, and talk a little bit about this really special place that we have, which is where we talk to the grown-ups, because we have lots of classes for kids, but many people don't realize that we have this community of adults as well. Do you want to say a few words about that before we get into the warm-up? Great.
Sure, I'd be glad to. David and I have been working with children for many years now, both in the classroom, but also in these online experiences where we have camps and courses. And all of our camps and courses with children, they're founded in building a sense of self and community. And we use these 4 storying steps in all of our courses and camps with children. I won't go into those right now, but they will come up in the course of the evening. 4 basic steps for creating story, tethering the parts of the story out that no longer serve us, and then building a story that does. We use these 4 steps also in our work with adults, and we've brought adults together who both want to find community with one another, but who also are looking for support in their own relationships with their children, with their students, and with their own inner development. And we do it all again with these 4 storying steps, which are fundamental and are not just something that we have used together, but they're something that we've discovered exists universally. And in addition to using these 4 storying steps, which I'll just mention here, and we'll go into it a little bit further later on as it's applicable, we first pay soft attention to what is in our environment. We look within to what affects us. We then take appropriate action. And after we've done those 3 things, we then allow and let go to the outcome of our good efforts. We use these 4 steps in a process with adults where we first identify the stories that live for us, and that's what we'll do in our warm-up tonight. Then we will break apart the parts of those stories that trigger us or that hold us back or that stand in our way of accessing greater ease and freedom in our personal lives. And once we can tether out the parts of the story that we'd like to leave behind, then we make room for something that is refreshed and restored. And we call that process restorying. So we story, we identify the stories that exist, we unstory, we tether out the parts that no longer serve, and then we restory. And that's the 3-part process that we'll take you all through tonight. And within that, we will be using these 4 storying steps, out of which the name Story Steps Education was born. So that's the common thread in what we do. We use these storying steps or these story steps in our work with children and with adults, with different outcomes perhaps, but with the same goal of strengthening a sense of self while joining in loving, encouraging community.
Mhm. It really is, and it's soothing, and it's empowering, and it's inspiring. It's amazing how useful these um, skills are in every aspect of life, parenting, educating, just in work, networking, all manner of it.
You know,
So we're gonna,
one thing I'd like to add um, very quickly is that right now there are so many different wonderful resources for support and help and self-awareness and self-development and healing, so many of which are valid, and each one of us are going to find our way to the ones that work for us and speak to us. One of the things that I will say that David and I bring to children, and we strive to bring also to our adults, is joy and creativity. And there's something to also having fun and accessing your capacities for that play while you're also healing, which is something that we work on with consciousness to bring to you adults and to our children as well.
Mhm. For sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have to have a good time. We have to, and we do. So we're going to do a little warm up, which will go into our first section, which is the storying process, which is to recognize and tease out what stories really live in us and what we believe is true, is real, is what's so. It'll be the first section. Then I'm going to hand it off to Meredith, who's going to lead us through a process of actually subtraction, of taking away or metabolizing parts of our story that we can let go of. And then we'll have a third section where we make room for new stories and we'll actually do some storytelling. Now, don't worry, we're not going to be bringing you forward and you're going to tell stories live. You're going to do that in your own space, on your own time. But we will ask periodically through the course of this, those of you who are live here right now, share things in the chat, and we may bring some of those things forward on the screen to share if we think it's really helpful for the process. So Meredith, for we'll do the warm up together, and then for the storying process where I'm going to write some things up on the board, I was thinking I would take the full screen for a little bit so that
Mhm,
people can see that,
mhm.
and then I'll bring you back in at the tail end of that.
Okay.
So together, let us finish a sentence together. And so the sentence is, I am an American because I am, and then fill in the blank. So an example of that might be, I am an American because I live in America. But we don't end there. We move on from there and do this at least 7 times, 7 to 10 times. And with each one, you'll find that you might deepen, might expand, you might arrive someplace that is surprising to you. But what we would like is for you to share what your final I am an American because I am, and then write in the chat, those of you who are here, what your final answer is, which is not the ultimate one. It's just one of many, but it will be interesting. That's what we're going for, is just seeing what sort of revelation comes. So I'm going to mute and I'm going to do it. And all of you do it. I am an American because I am, fill in the blank. And then we'll all share after, a minute, maybe, uh, what we came up with. All right, I am unmuted. Whenever you arrive, if you can put in the chat the end of the sentence, I am an American because I am, and then put that last part in there. And I am an American because I believe in freedom to be me and others to be them.
Mm.
Mine were pretty clunky, Meredith. It was really interesting. Part of a great experiment to self-govern.
Mm.
Beautiful. I am an American because I see hope and possibility in uncertainty.
Ooh.
There's a lot there. That's a lot there. There's a lot there. I want to take that. I want to absorb that.
Hmm. I see hope and possibility in uncertainty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Q Waterworks. Because I believe in our democracy. Because I choose to live in America. I choose to live in America. Because I am more together than one by one. I am an American because I belong to this land. I'm an American because I am committed to choice, because it had opportunities for immigrants. I am
Mhm.
an American because my ancestors longed for freedom and came here in search for it. So we're
Thank
feeling things.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I'm feeling, and I'm going to use this word and I claim it, is I'm feeling patriotic.
Mhm.
And I'm an American because of shared language, land, and food. A beautiful living manifestation of the sacrifice of my forefathers.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of these. Um, so, with that feeling that we're experiencing right now, Meredith, before I make my screen big, is there anything you'd like to say about what we're about to do?
You said you feel patriotic, and reading these comments, it's emotional for me
Mhm.
to read them. I'm feeling proud
Mhm.
to be an
Mhm.
American, and I haven't felt that in a while.
Mhm.
So thank you all for reminding me that I'm proud to be an American.
Mhm. Mhm. All right. I will be right back, Meredith.
Okay.
Okay. So my screen is big because I'm going to be writing on it. What I would like from all of you, and I'm going to be looking at the comments for this, is just really quickly, we're made of stories. And I mean that quite concretely. Our understanding of what is so, what is real, what is our identity, who we are, what America is, who our family is. Whatever there's meaning, there's stories. So we are our biographies, we are our family history, we are all the stories that we have consumed over our life, that we have integrated into our being, you know, our favorite poems, our favorite books, movies, etc. And where we live is a part of who we are. Our country is a part of who we are. And so unpacking what America is also helps us know who we are. So what I would like is, let's put ideas up on the board of the American story. So what are some American stories that are, whether you believe them or not, they're coming to mind. Whether you, I should rephrase that, whether you think they're true or not, they are still a part of what you believe is the American story. For instance, this phrase, the land of the free and home of the brave. So there's a lot in that. Land of the free, home of the brave. That's a story. And that's a part of the Star Spangled Banner, and it's probably one of the most famous parts of the Star Spangled Banner. And there are other parts of the Star Spangled Banner which you would probably not be very proud of because they include references to slavery. But we like Land of the Free and Home of the Brave. It is a part of our American story. Another one is this one, which comes from John Winthrop, but Ronald Reagan referenced it, and it's actually biblical, which is the shining city on the hill. I think that's what it is, on the hill, upon the hill. All right, biblical. I think it might be Proverbs. I'm not really sure, but John Winthrop, who is the Puritan governor of Massachusetts, used specifically that language, and this was the shadow side of that is how people who were not Puritans were sometimes treated, and sometimes quite violently. So there's a shadow side to all of these, and I don't mean to just put things up here that I then say, yeah, but that's the nature of stories and what we integrate, and then as we expand on that, what we learn about that. Oh, my dog's having a moment. All right, so please add in the comments any American stories, Land of Milk and Honey, yes, that beloved community. Thank you. In God we trust. Great. Beloved community. Good. Land of Opportunity, big one there. And expansion. Yep. Melting pot. Yeah, there's a big one. Anything is possible. One nation under God. Anyone, Manifest Destiny. Yeah, that's got to get up there. Not density, destiny. Freedom. Justice for all. Yep. Struggle. Innovation. Excellent. These are so good. The bootstraps. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, everybody. Okay, a couple more. Amber waves of grain. What do you think of the Westing game? I have a dream. Yes. Okay. take a look at that. And then I'm going to read through them all again with Meredith, because that is a lot of storying right there. Meredith, I'm going to bring you forward. And I want to go back through this list really quickly. And why I want to go through this again is because not all of them are up here. And in the next step that Meredith is going to take you through, this list is going to be handy. And actually, instead of me, I'm just going to get out of the way for your section, Meredith, so that that board can still be up. So, beloved community. Yes, Meredith, did you say something? Oh, okay. Beloved community, land of opportunity, in God we trust, expansion, melting pot, one nation under God, another melting pot, anything is possible, manifest destiny, anyone can be or become an American, one nation under God, things that come aren't always the things that are right, manifest destiny, freedom, justice for all, struggle, innovation, capitalism is king, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Where is it possible to pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Very, very good point. Small things matter. I have a dream. Equality, experience, experiment, amber waves of grain, and the American dream. Big one right there. American dream, independence, hands off government, indigenous nations, and history. So, American story. Not all of these apply to everybody, but some of them do, and some of them are complicated. Some of them you say, yeah, actually, that is a part of why I'm proud to be an American, and some of them you do not feel proud about. For whatever reasons, you do not feel proud about them. So here's the full plate of narrative, and there's no room for us to necessarily put something new in there until we make some room. And that's the unstorying process that Meredith will walk us through. And I'm going to get out of the way.
Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you all for this rich menu. So, when we create a story, when we believe a story, when we embody a story, there are three components that are at play that make a narrative that for us gives it meaning. And that is that we have a set of words. So they're up there on the board are a set of words. We had some picture, some imagination that would be associated with those words. And then we have some sensation or some emotion. And when those three things come together, it makes meaning for us. And I think that it's easier sometimes to understand this when you imagine if you have children or you've worked with children or just look back at your own childhood when you've listened to a story or had a story read to you, you are immersed in that story because you're hearing the words, you're having some imagination of what's happening in that story, and there's some visceral, sensorial experience that you're having. So too, as adults, when we digest beliefs as story, they can then drive our motivations or define who we believe we are, or impact our opinions, or inform our responses or our reactions. And it's just important to be conscious about that as adults. So we're going to step into now the unstorying process. We've just created some stories that you see on the board or in the chat. And unstorying now is going to separate out words and images and sensations so that we can untether them and see them for what they are, as opposed to having them grip us or grab us in ways that um, gives us less mastery than we might want. Before we dive into that process a little more deeply, I'd like you just to tap in for just a moment. How would you like to feel right now in this process that we're in as a nation, as a world? Or how would you like your fellow Americans to behave, to join, to comport themselves with one another? How would you like to see the politicians interacting with one another? Not so much asking at all, what are you hoping for in terms of the election outcome? This isn't a political discussion in that regard. It's more, how would you like to feel in the midst of all of this as an American? Just just take a moment to identify what is uncomfortable for you right now. What's not setting well with you right now? And what would you like? You don't need to take long with this, and this is a multi-layered process. Just identify one aspect of an experience that's not settling well with you and how you'd like to experience something different. Now, in looking at that story montage that's in front of you, just scan it with soft attention. This is this 4-step process that I mentioned earlier. Just scan that list or go through the comments or think of the one that you brought forward and just home in on the one or a one that calls your attention. That calls your attention in a way where there's a little dissonance, either because it's not being realized, it's an ideal that you hold and it's not being realized, or some aspect of that story that you think has been misrepresented in history. Just scan that list and without then thinking about it, second step, what draws your affection? Which one of those stories affects you? So, first step is pay soft attention to the montage without thinking about it. Which one affects you in a way that has some dissonance tonight? And now we'll enter into the third step, which is to approach. This is where we take the brave step to really look at what's going on here. Why is there dissonance? Is it the words that are triggering or that aren't sitting right with you? Is there some imagination or memory that you're holding? Or is there something then in your sensorial body right now? Is there some emotion that you're feeling? And focus in on one of those, right? So if you're seeing, for example, the words, I have a dream, just ask yourself, is it those 4 words that have power for me? Is it the imagination of Martin Luther King Jr. speaking those words in Washington, D.C.? Or is there some feeling in your chest that's just vibrating right now and calling your attention? So we're just going to separate out one aspect, either the words, the imagination, or the sensation. Just the one that has the most volume for you now. And you're welcome to put that in the chat. You certainly don't have to. But really, the idea here is to sit with this in a private, personal way. And whatever that is for you right now, if it's a set of words that's just not sitting right with you, or an imagination, or some emotion that's keeping you from that feeling that you want for yourself, for your fellow Americans, for your politicians, just hold that up. Just take a few breaths, just get 10% more comfortable in your chair, just 10%. Just try to settle in a little bit. Feel the support of the chair. Let yourself be supported. There's nothing you need to do right now to hold it. Just let the chair or the couch or wherever you are hold you. And in that place, holding those words, that image, or those sensations, and with your breath, bring your full attention as you breathe in on either the words, the image, or the sensation. Full attention. Breathing in, and as you breathe out, just widen your attention, broaden it to the space or the periphery around it, around the words, around the image, or around the sensation. Just one of those, though. Just words, just image, just sensation. Once they're connected, they have power. Full attention as you breathe in on whatever it is that you're focusing on. Soft attention, widened attention as you breathe out. Focus in as you breathe in, and open the focus as you breathe out. And just do that a few more repetitions. You may find that those words disperse a bit, that sensation loosens a bit, that the image becomes a little bit more transparent. You may not. With time and patience, this can happen. If one of those words, images, or sensations have fallen away or softened, inquire again. What comes up next? Maybe the words have softened, but right now you're very much aware of a sensation or the picture. And maybe you're still focusing on the first aspect. We'll just spend a few more moments as you either continue with what you've been focusing on, or if that has relaxed, go to the next thing that comes up. The only thing I'm asking is that you focus on only words, only sensation, or only image. Full attention, focused attention, soft attention. This is not an intellectual activity. Full attention, give it the attention it wants, and then go to the periphery. And this is a process that takes some time. We wouldn't take it through to its full completion tonight, but it's something that I invite you to do when you're feeling particularly worked up, particularly triggered, unsettled. Spend some time and ask yourself, am I unsettled because of the strength of the words? Is there an imagination? Or is it a strong emotion that's got its grip right now? And if you separate those out, the story that is driving you loses some of its narrative magnetism. So that then we can make room for the story you want to tell. So with practice, this becomes an easier experience to enter into. But there's a little taste of Unstory.
Well, I'm going to do something cathartic. I took a picture because I'm literally going to make room now. So, members, that picture that I took, we'll put that along with this webinar. But we need space for what happens next. Because now that we have gone through this process together of making room, now we get to actually think about restoring a new story of where are we headed? What is this American experiment? What is our future? And since you are a relevant citizen of this experiment, you get to impact what it becomes. And in order to do that, we really need to figure out, like, what is our vision for this country? What is our vision for ourselves in this country? What are we willing to really integrate into our very being so that we can, be the change that we want the country to be? So we're going to populate again this board here, but now it's what impulses, what qualities, what phrases do you have that you want this country to be? And some of them may be things that were up on the board before, but you didn't really feel like, the country was really behaving in that way. But wouldn't it be great if it did? I think of, like, this word is often around, and of tolerance.
We have a few in the comment section already.
Oh, why don't you just read them off to me, and I'll put them up, and then when this dries, you'll be able to see a little bit better.
Yeah. So, integrity.
Yeah.
We have a participant who would like to feel hopeful. Connected. Together. You're welcome to add more as you need. Listening to each other. Included and inclusive. Liberty and justice for all. Safe, compassionate, equitable. I'll read these, David, and then as they're coming in, and you can write them as you can, but okay. Compassionate disagreements. You are our brother's keeper. Unity. Open-minded. Compassionate disagreements.
What after open-minded?
Compassionate disagreements.
Yep, got that.
Generous of heart. freedom, peaceful. We have compassionate. Freedom and justice.
And peaceful. Okay. All right, a bunch of words up there. You can take the one that that you added, or you're welcome to borrow any of these. But remember the experience with Unstorying with Meredith, where you identified a feeling that you really want to align yourself with. And so that feeling, whether it is peaceful or patriotic or brave or strong or confident or vulnerable, I'm really, experimenting with surrender right now. All of these things, find something, and what you're going to do is think of or write down on a piece of paper or look at it up on the blackboard and just notice the feeling. So you can pick a word that makes you feel a certain way, or you can pick a feeling and then find the word that is associated with it. But you want to identify the feeling that the word gives you. So do that, and you're welcome. I'll get out of the way here so you can look at some that are up here. And we're going to tell ourselves a story in a moment, and we'll press mute. We're all going to do this, and then we'll compare notes. We start with the feeling. Step 2 in the 4-step process is affection. Notice how the word affects you. What feeling does the word elicit? And I'm going to go with, it's not up here, but vulnerability. I want that. Identify the feeling. Okay, and here's where things get a little storytelling-y. I want you to think of an old world profession. So what I mean by that is, like, the professions that exist in the fairy tales, the bakers, the candlestick makers, the coopers, barrel makers, the smiths, hat makers, tailors, bookbinders, furriers, any number of things. If there's something that is made, like the Sparkle story, Bodger, making chair and table legs. So think of an old world profession that comes to mind. Doesn't matter, but pick it, write it down, just hold on to it inside your person. And then I want you to imagine the central character in this story that you're going to tell. Maybe it is the bodger, maybe it is the baker, or maybe it's the baker's husband, or maybe it's the candlestick maker's wife, or whatever. The central character is in what Americans are in right now, however you want to describe it: polarized, separate, angry, resentful, sad, scared, all the different things, judgmental, angry. You're going to move from a place to a new place. So what we want is our central character to start in one place, which is the part of the American story that we want to let go of. And then we're going to move toward what we want, which is that feeling in that word. And so what's going to happen is that, without thinking about it, because the danger when we're doing these sorts of stories is that we feel that the story needs to be good, which it doesn't. We want our story to make sense, which it doesn't. We want it to deliver a message. It doesn't need to. It can be all over the place. In fact, it's probably better, because then it'll sneak up on you. We don't want to just talk to ourselves and tell us what we already know. We want to discover something. So in order to discover something, we need to be willing to be surprised. And to be surprised, we need to be willing to follow the squirrel wherever it goes. even if it feels like it has nothing to do with what's going on. So quite specifically, what's going to happen is Meredith and I are going to mute. We're going to do this too. You pick an old world profession. You place your character into some sort of thing that you don't want for this country anymore. Whatever it is, the way in which we relate to each other, whatever it is, start it there. Once upon a time, there was a chair leg maker who lived out in the woods because he hated the people in the city. Okay? That's where my story is going to start. And if I'm going to get from there towards the feeling of making myself vulnerable, I'm just going to trust that it'll come up, but I'm not going to try to put it in there. I'm just going to talk. So start your story and keep talking, even if it's nonsense, and just go for a full minute or two. And then when we stop, you're going to have really gotten the ball rolling and you'll be upset with me for stopping you. You can continue your story later, but we're just going to touch base and compare notes and talk about the experience thus far. Okay. Meredith, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to mute. I'm going to keep going with that Bodger story. And we'll meet back here in a couple minutes. Well, all right. I didn't expect that. So, sorry, everybody, to interrupt. You don't have to stop. You can keep storying because what you're doing right now is the point of this mini workshop. If you feel like taking a break and coming and asking questions or offering in the chat what you learned in the story, even in that short term, or what questions came up for you, or things to ponder about what it is to be an American, what the American story is. We'll talk about the comments as they come or questions as they come. And in the meantime, I'm curious, Meredith, what happened?
Well, I had a hat maker,
Mm.
and no matter what she did to make as many different hats as she could to please everybody, no one was really happy with the hats.
Mm.
She just kept trying to make hats that pleased everybody, and they weren't happy, and so she just made one standard hat and gave everybody the same hat, and it was not how the hat looked that made the difference, but was how people felt in the hat, and as long as people saw that each other had had the hat, they were connected. And it
Mm.
didn't matter how it wasn't the hat that it wasn't the hat that she made that pleased them. It was that they saw the common thread in each one of them, that they all, on some level, are wearing a hat. And it didn't make sense, but it makes sense to me now.
Mhm.
Just makes sense to me now. And that as long as they were wearing the hat, then they saw that one thing they had in common, and that's what connected them. The
Mm.
one thing. They were all it wasn't about pleasing each one of them individually, it was about finding the thing they had in common, and we all share something in common. That's where I got.
Oh, man, and that's just the idea of us, the where we are at as a country where we can get anything we want at any time, you know? And we don't even leave the house. We can get whatever we want anywhere in the world right now. And how much of that is disconnecting us, in some way. Um, the Bodger had removed himself from the city because he was just so disgusted with what was happening there, and just felt like it was sort of like Sodom and Gomorrah. Just like people are not behaving well, I'm getting out of there. I'm going to go be by myself in the nature. And a little girl got lost because the people from the city came into the woods and weren't paying attention to where they were going, and you know, um, and the girl was so magically connected to everything that was happening. She ended up with the Bodger, and the Bodger back in the city. But he realized through the course of going back to the city that actually what they need in the city is to get out of the city, like him, and be with nature. Experience the magic of it and the wonder of it, and that I got to the place of vulnerability in that I just need to make myself available. I may not be comfortable in this space, but I have something to offer these people. And so, have something to model these people in the city. So I'm going to keep thinking about that. There is My Weaver, who felt the world around her was in severe conflict. She slowly began to realize that her fear had to be overcome. She needed to find someone to buy wool from and others to sell her fabric to. When she ventured out, she realized the farmer had too much grain and the milkmaid had too much, and all needed to begin to interact so that their talents could support each other. Beautiful. And I love that it's a weaver, weaving it all together. How do we go from telling the story about where our character is to where we want them to be without it seeming being contrived or self-conscious? Yeah, perfect question. So it becomes contrived or self-conscious when we try to make the story go a particular direction, where we try to make it work with the vulnerability and instead follow the butterflies as they come and trust that they are the truth of the story and not a distraction. So suddenly, a girl shows up in the forest. I don't know what to do with the girl from a narrative standpoint, but I'm just going to tell her story and talk about that for a little while. I have no idea what this is going to do. And so if you're in that place of, I don't know where story is going, I would say you're in the right place.
Yeah.
If you know where the story is going, maybe throw a wrench in it.
Yeah, and I would say that comes with practice. I've been hanging out with this guy, or maybe it's this guy, I'm not sure which
Yeah,
one.
I'm over here. Yeah.
That I've learned to just blah, 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 and not care if it makes sense, and just trust that if everyone's got a blue hat with a red feather, okay. I don't know where it's taking me, but okay. Because I was in that same place, Michelle, where not long ago, where I felt there it had to be driven by some outcome, um, and I've learned to mess it up. And
Yeah. On
so
purpose.
you just practice it. You practice messing it up, and as long as you're not performing, but you're practicing, you'll get there.
Hmm. And I've done that performing, by the way. I've done that publicly in front of a lot of people. Just completely wrecked the story because you can tell everybody knows when we're just telling something that we all know already. It's we're at the edge of our seats when we know that the storyteller is at the edge of their seat. All right, from Leah, yes, it doesn't surprise me that your story, even about a weaver, ended up being similar, because we all are here and we're all experiencing the same sorts of things. And the narrative of what we believe we need and our country needs for healing, balance, restoration, we're going to be stumbling across the same sorts of stories. So we will close with this last question. How do we turn these stories of weaving and connection and all sides communicating and listening, like in The Gardener and the Fool, to each other into reality? Asking because it makes me feel good, but I also feel like stories need to be happening at a nationwide scale to make change.
Great question.
Excellent. And what is this nation but a bunch of states that are made up of a bunch of counties that are made up of a bunch of cities that are made up of a bunch of neighborhoods that are made up of a bunch of households that are made up of a bunch of people. So what is small is big, and what is big is small. If you enter and claim and tell and retell a story, especially in this ultra connected age of, technology brings us to the other side of the world in an instant, you tell that story and it's true, that story is going to spread fast. And the fact of the matter is, because of the whole weaver dynamic that Leah was bringing up, that story's out there and it's making itself available to whoever is willing and brave enough to tell it. And if 5 people are telling it, or 20 people are telling it, or thousands of people are telling it, so long as it gets told, that story, the truth of that story, will spread. So trust your story. If it's giving you the feeling that you want to feel, other people are going to feel that way when you tell it. We are wizards. We have incredible power. And it starts and ends, as far as I'm concerned, with the stories that we claim and tell. All right, all. Got a big few days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for your trust in being here. Thank you for sharing, and onward and upward, and keep storying.
Keep storying. Okay. Until the next time, come visit us over at Story Steps Education at teachable.com. And if this has spoken to you and something that you want to keep doing, please consider becoming a member. We really have a good time, and we do things like this on a weekly basis. So hopefully we'll see some of you over there. Bye-bye.
Hands together, all. Hands together. Bye-bye.